Welcome back, friends. My name's Doug Neal. I am in the process of creating a Notion setup that's particularly well suited for sketchnoters. I want to build a system that's a great place for folks taking visual notes to store their sketch notes, to share their sketch notes publicly, to work with those sketch notes long into the future. And I think Notion is the tool that can do that best. Last time I got my very first public page set up with Notion, kind of the home page for this project. Check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Today I'm going to work on getting my first sketch note added to that website, viewable publicly, but also still kind of maintaining all of the kind of database information behind it that makes it this helpful reusable block for potentially a countless number of projects in the future. If you like the sound of what's going on here, then consider supporting this project on Patreon. That's where I will be sharing all Notion templates, I'll be answering questions, I'll be requesting features for this type of sketchnoting storage and sharing tool. So I encourage you to go check that out. So here we are on the public facing page that I created last time. Today though, let me start by going back to my dashboard. So this all is still private. It's not shared to the web. That's kind of a cool thing with Notion. You can have certain parts of it just for you, other parts that are public facing. Last time I showed you I think it was a Tim Ferriss sketch note. This time, let me pick a single page sketch note. Maybe this one here. So here I sketchnoted a podcast episode from the beginning of the year from Todd Henry's podcast called The Accidental Creative. This is what that sketch note looks like. I've kind of already created kind of individual images for each of the specific points within that episode, each of the individual lessons that Todd Henry learned. So this could be an interesting example of like a sketch note that could be broken down into multiple parts. And here is the drafting that I did on index cards before I created it. Okay, so those are the sketch notes. I have created a blog post on Verbal to Visual about this. Verbal to Visual is more about teaching the skill of sketchnoting. So that's what kind of these blog posts focus on. And I do a little bit of kind of summarizing, but not a whole lot. Summarizing of new sketch notes that I've taken. And this is an option, just like, creating a blog on WordPress. That's one way that you can share your sketch notes. I'm fairly confident that the tools within Notion will allow you to do a lot more dynamic things. So let's take a look at how I might add this to my public facing Notion for Sketchnoters page. First, let's go full screen here. So I think the first thing I want to do here is I want to add a property that can allow me to set whether or not any given sketch note that I've shared in my database is public or not. So I'm going to add a property here. Here you'll also see kind of what Notion feels like to add new characteristics, new data points to a specific type of thing. Right now I am editing what a note is. I can dig deeper into like the specific databases that I use maybe in a future video. So here I just want to be able to determine whether it's public or not. So it's a little checkbox. And now just so you can kind of see too, I added that property while looking at this specific note. But if I go back and pick a different sketch note, like Mike Rohde's concepts interview, you'll notice that same toggle is here as well. So anytime you add a property to one instance of a given type of database, it gets added to all of the instances of that database. So going back to Todd Henry's lessons learned, I do want to make that public. And so here's what we'll find out here. So that's a way for me to see like within the database what's public and what's not. Then of course, as we saw last time, there's this share button that also makes it public. I do want search engine indexing on. This is a way that folks can find your work over time. Now to make sure, I'm curious to see. So here's the public page. What I'm interested in doing is kind of controlling what shows up on this public page. I want the public record like of your sketch notes to not feel like a database. I want them to have like your sketch notes and maybe some reflections on them. So it's this interesting blend of like have it being this public facing thing that others who make it to this page could learn something from, but still maintain these kind of database elements so that they're useful when you want to, say, search for all of your sketchnotes related to diversity or curiosity or strategy. And what I also want to do here, I'm going to open up a new browser. What's not yet super clear to me is what sort of navigation folks can do when they're like not the person logged into the Notion account. So this is my Notion account here. What happens if someone else makes it to this? Can they kind of explore some of these tags? This is interesting. Like you can see that these are fields when you're looking at the public facing site, but yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can follow links. You can connect them. Well, this is a linked element to a different database, which I'll share more about later. I think there's an option when on this page. Yeah, okay, here we go. So let me see what hide when empty, always hide. So that you can hide certain properties. So for example, if it weren't important to me that folks saw maybe the type, since for the public facing ones, they're always going to be sketchnotes. Reading, let's say hide when empty. Oh, they do show 2 more properties here. Oh, I see. So it's like a hide reveal. Does that show up in the same way over here? Okay, so that's kind of interesting. You could have those properties hidden, certain properties hidden by default. So another property, this one can be hidden since the, here we go. I wonder if we can, I want to make like this image the cover. Okay, so to make your sketchnote itself the cover for the page, let me just do this real quick. Download it, and then change the cover here, upload it. So now on the public facing page, we do, just have a tiny bit of it. Here's the very top. Maybe we reposition it a little bit to, yeah, maybe something like that, just to give a better preview of what's actually going on there. Positioning looks a little different here compared to here. Well, maybe it's not making a difference. And I think my boys are gonna wake up. I made some updates to this note format that I think make it work a lot better as a public-facing set of sketchnotes. So let me walk you through each of the fields here of the database and then kind of what I shared below. I think I just added date created instead of just date to be a little more clear. People instead of person, because sometimes you'll have multiple people represented within a single sketchnote. And then I added this text field of a summary, thinking about one, this being helpful for you when you review these notes, but potentially if a visitor makes it here, they'll get a quick summary of what these sketchnotes are all about. So in this case, while reflecting back on 2020, Todd Henry shares the 5 most important lessons he learned. And then the link I used to have was when I was using Notion just as an internal tool, I linked it to the blog post at Verbal to Visual where these sketch notes live. But now thinking of this kind of as a standalone sketchnote repository that I will use and that I hope others will find useful as well, a link to the source material makes a lot more sense. So this is just a link to the podcast episode that I sketchnoted. And then we've got source format here, podcast, other options for this one. These are the ones that I've created here, potential things that I might sketchnote. Then we've got our list of concepts. This is a big list too that kind of I just started growing with the first sketchnote that I added to this database. So over time, there are now lots of concepts that are included within at least one sketchnote. Working with these concepts is a big piece of the long-term value of creating this type of database. And then I added another text field, this time for follow-up. In this case, for the sketchnoter, me, what sort of follow-up action do I want to take now that I've learned the same lessons that Todd Henry learned? So I mentioned here in 2021, while continuing to build the Verbal to Visual, start diversifying my portfolio with 2 projects in mind: essay writing on Medium, and this one here, Notion for Sketchnoters. So here what's nice is that I've included external links to Verbal to Visual, to where my writing on Medium lives, and also to the homepage for Notion for Sketchnoters. So those links are partially helpful for me, but also potentially helpful for other folks who might make their way to these notes, maybe from just a Google search. And then I've hidden 3 properties that might be helpful for me internally, but don't need to show up on the public page of these Sketchnotes. So the checkbox of it being public, the image, this is like the kind of, there's not a great way to include images within a database. You can include it as a file, but the preview shows up pretty small, though you can zoom in like this. Still though, I like to have the image of the sketchnote itself within the database. And in this case, I have the type of note that it is, a sketchnote, as opposed to, these are other types of notes that I've used internally within my Notion system. But those don't need to be shown for someone making their way to these sketchnotes. Then within the body, I've included each of the 5 individual ideas that I sketchnoted here with a caption. So this is kind of all one block here. And the fact that it's a block makes it reusable, which we'll see in the future. In future videos, I'll show you how I'm imagining using something like this for future projects. But here, in addition to having the image of the sketchnote for that particular idea, I found it really helpful to go through and write a caption where I summarized the ideas within that sketchnote. And again, this is a way of kind of almost using teaching as a tool to help you remember the ideas that you just sketchnoted. And it was kind of helpful that I first created these sketchnotes many months ago, so I had to explain these in my own words, outside of some of the words that already exist within the sketchnote. The main idea being, diversify your portfolio before you need it. Relying on one income source or one client is dangerous. By diversifying your portfolio, creating different projects that aren't dependent on each other, you're more likely to withstand unforeseen circumstances that cause you to lose one of those income streams. So that's a little bit of just like a text summary of what this idea is all. And looking towards the future, this combo, kind of dragging both of these things, maybe into a presentation, maybe into an essay I'm working on, it creates a great starting point. I might use some of that text within whatever it is that I'm writing or within the presentation I want to give. I don't have to kind of rephrase these ideas from scratch because I already have this little chunk. And this kind of chunking is an idea that I explored and I guess in some ways first heard about in connection with this idea of the second brain. Over on Verbal to Visual, I did a sketchnote of Ali Abdal's video about the second brain. So the things I'm talking about here are very related to that concept, so you might enjoy checking out that video. The second lesson that Todd Henry learned from 2020, have a break the glass strategy. Though rare, emergencies are inevitable. By making a plan for what you'll do in an emergency and setting aside the resources that you'll need for that plan, you'll be able to react quickly when it strikes. So this gives you a feel for kind of what I want to capture within the page for a given sketchnote. And future sketchnotes won't always include individual images like this. It might just have one where you then have like a paragraph caption for that image. But I hope you can see kind of how these are little idea chunks that can be the building blocks for future projects. I'll link to this page if you want to explore and read all these things yourself. I also include the full final image, full set of sketch notes of the 5 lessons that Todd Henry learned from 2020. And I happened, in this case, to have captured the first draft of those sketch notes, which I just took on index cards. And keeping in mind that I want this to be a public page, at the end right now, all I'm linking to is kind of the homepage for this project. Explore more sketch notes here. Notion for Sketchnoters. That takes folks back to the homepage of this project, which for now still just has that kind of mission statement that I wrote in the last video. This will continue growing, so probably even by the time you're viewing this video here, there will already be some more things below. Because right now, from the homepage, you can't even get to those Todd Henry sketch notes. In the next video, I'm going to kind of link them up a little bit and also add another sketch note or two to that public database, because then I think you'll really start to see kind of the accumulative power of sharing your work in this way and creating the types of links and kind of database information that will be useful. For today, though, I hope you enjoyed seeing what it might look like to use Notion to create some public-facing sketch notes and the type of information that you might want to include. Again, this combo of database information here, plus more information, more written reflections that you can add within the body of this note. I'm excited to continue building out from here, and I hope you are too. If you'd like to support this project, get access to the templates that will help you implement this type of system very easily, then come join us on Patreon. There you'll be able to ask me questions about all this, make feature requests, and access all the resources that I plan to start putting out very soon if I haven't already. So do consider supporting in that way. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to sharing another one again with you very soon. See you next time.